There we go. Now I'm going to start the presentation that I'm giving to University of Potomac in about an hour. So let's see, I want to share this one. Don't need sound, you got my sound. And do you guys see the presentation or do you see my notes?
I see a presentation.
Presentation, yeah.
The full page. Good.
No,
good,
the notes. It's the notes. There's a notes there. It says no notes, and it says next slide in the presentation.
Right. Okay. So I'm sure on the wrong screen. All right. So let me change that.
Parima's right.
Yay, Parima. So select items to share, and I will go over to that page. All right, so now you should be seeing the Facebook page, right?
Yes.
And now you see the slide.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So I have to remember to do that when I'm in his class as well. We're using Google Meet in the next hour. So anyway, the class is CBSC 510, Cloud Computing from the Ground Up, and I'm presenting to their regular scheduled Saturday morning class. I wanted to share information about me. I think you guys have all seen this, you know, blah, 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 blah. This is all my special stuff. The reason why I believe that I have the credentials and the qualifications to be a mentor, they're all up here. I have had, I would call it a unique life experience, and I just want to share with everybody. So I feel like it's my responsibility to help pass this on to others so that they can get that same experience and enjoy it, because I truly love the IT career field. So I was going to do an icebreaker and ask them around, or by a show of hands or whatever, you know, their IT and cybersecurity experience. Because this is a cybersecurity degree program, some of these people could very well have been recruited into it by ads. You know, you could have been pumping gas or whatever before that, and now you're working on a cybersecurity degree. So the point of this is I want them to think about their experience, because that is a big product to how they are going to get hired the first time. The second question, though, how large is your network? What I'm trying to refer to is, have you started to associate with peers? If you want to get into cybersecurity, you don't have to have a job to start accumulating your network. And that's kind of where I'm going with that. And then I have another one that says, other than your degree, what are you doing? And of course, you know what I'm going to recommend by the end of this presentation. So one question that I said I would give it extra credit. What do you think is the #1 question I'm asked by newly graduated cybersecurity degree holders? And I've shared it here, but I will, you know, wait till the end here to talk to you about it. So I called this presentation 13 Cloud Computing Considerations. And I spoke about Chapter 11 because I actually reviewed their textbook that they're using. But I said cloud computing considerations. They may not be risks, they may be concerns, they may be just something to be aware of, but I wanted them to think about it in reference to cloud computing and cybersecurity. I did mention to them, I said, your textbook's really thorough. What I'm sharing here is based on experience, not the textbook. So therefore, if it seems like what I say and what your book says are two different things, then use what the book says when you take your exam. Don't turn around and say, well, Scotty says. No, don't do that. If the book says A and I say it could be A or B, it's A when you're doing your exam. I don't want them to get lost or you know, think that they are receiving sage information that trumps everything else. It's just not the case.
Hey, Scotty, that's good to go with life as well. If you're taking a test like from CompTIA or ISC squared, as
Right.
much as you do work in what work tells you to do,
Yep.
ISC squared and CompTIA is expecting a answer that they've written in their objectives
Right.
versus what you may do at work.
Right. Yep, I remember sitting in an ITIL class, my very first ITIL V3 class back in 2007, I think it was, and we spoke about what ITIL says and what ITIL recommends and those sorts of things. And there was a guy in the back of the class, and he's like, yeah, but that's not how it is in real world. Yeah, well, in the real world, I wouldn't do that. And in the real world, we only do it this way. And he just went on and on and on and on about the real world. And guess who failed his ITIL exam? So just realize, although the teachers aren't supposed to teach to the test and you're not supposed to study so that you'll pass the test, the goal is to pass the class. So yeah, very good, Chris. So I did give them fair warning on this. I said, this is going to be real life stuff. And it's going to be enterprise level. It could be organizational level, and it gets deep really fast. In other words, this is not textbook stuff you write down and stare at later. This is stuff you think about and go, holy smokes, I never thought about that. So I said, think of it in this way. It's everything all at once, or think about it as the day after you get hired. You know, when you step into your workplace, what's happening at that time? So that was how I tried to put it together for them. So I said, okay, number one, this is a consideration, interstitial complexity. Sounds like a bunch of big words, but the point I was trying to make is that it's very likely that you as a service provider are going to have services, if you opt to go with cloud services, from multiple providers. You're going to have a Microsoft provider. You may have an Amazon provider. You may have a Google provider. You may have providers like crazy. And not only do you have to be concerned about how your organization works with one particular cloud provider, but also how the cloud providers work in relation to each other. So it's not just me. It's not just Google or Amazon or Microsoft or whatever. It is all of them together. And every time the data transits a boundary, and that's why I said interstitial, every time it transits a boundary, whether it's authentication, whether it's data movement, whatever, permissions, all of that have to be looked at as a very complex process. It's no longer me getting to my data. Okay, number two was greater risk. And what I mean by that is the more complex your organizational offering is, the greater the risk that something will be done incorrectly. And it could have broader impact, because something done over in Amazon could now impact people's access to Microsoft. So that's what I mean about greater risk. Again, it's not just me to my services and my services back to me. It's far greater than that. So you always have to be thinking, this is the way I put it in my head, you have to be thinking at a systems level and no longer like a vending machine. I put in a quarter, I pull the handle, I get my, juice box or whatever. It's not like that anymore. You have to think about where that juice came from, floor space to put the box. Where do you get the power? Who pays for the power for the box that provides the floor, et cetera, et cetera. There's more to it than me putting in my money and getting my juice box. And I said, the more complex your cloud solutions, the greater risk that you'll have difficulty and suffer reduced performance, denials of service, or worst of all, data breaches. Okay, number three, less control. And then I said, what vendors When vendors present their proposed solutions to you, they will suggest what works best for them. In other words, what their workforce is trained and certified to operate. It makes a lot of sense. The issue is that 3 or 4 vendors will undoubtedly give you 2, 3, or 4 different solutions that provide the same services that you may have put your requirements for. So from a security role, also, you aren't able to specify which solution is chosen. Very rarely is security the final decision on a purchase or a service. What I said to them is, you may advise, but it's not your call to specify the solution. So you have less control, and there are approaches to handle that, but you have less control in the entire acquisition and operation and maintenance process. Okay, number 4, vendor interest clash. This was one that I had to think about long and thoroughly on. I said various vendors will propose the most current solutions. If you remember number 3, just before this, the most current solutions. They'll say, we have the latest and greatest, and it's just like the bee's knees, and you got to have it and, buy our service. But once they obtain the contract, let's say it's a 3-year contract, they obtain the contract to provide services for your organization. After that, they're going to try and stay locked into that solution, because if there are advancements or new developments or even new software that arrives, they have to absorb the cost to retrain and recertify their workforce. So they're going to say, no, you asked us for this. We're providing this using this service or this software. And if you want more, then you got to pay more. So the interest of the vendor changes over time from, I want you to be impressed with me, to, I want to make sure that I'm doing this in an economical fashion and I'm not losing my company money. So the point of it is, after your vendors are awarded, they will be focusing only on their SLAs, their service level agreement, service amounts. And when you have more than one vendor, vendor A is going to focus only on their SLAs, and vendor B is only going to focus on their SLAs. They don't care about the other vendor. So that's the interest. Okay? Next one, management perception. This was a fun one. I thought about it and I said, your management, your CEO, your CFO, are always going to be making their decision based on effectiveness, but also the bottom line. To your executives, they may be thinking one solution is just as good as another. So you're going to propose a $1 million solution and a $2 million solution, and they're going to say, well, this one has to be twice as good, or else it's not worth twice the money. So your management will always lean and urge you to lean toward the least costly solution, even if that means, and I'll give this again, the systems level approach. If your solution, you're trying to keep all the solutions together. You say, I want everything to run on the Amazon platform. Why? Because we have specialists in Amazon, we're trained in Amazon, we manage Amazon already, we're comfortable with Amazon. But then Microsoft pops up a much less expensive solution that does the same thing. Your CFO is not going to be pleased putting more zeros on that check simply because you're more comfortable with Amazon. They're going to want to go with the bottom line, which could force you to go to greater complexity. All right? Make sense? Cool. Next one, number 6, greater than one cost and complexity. This is a tough one to think about, but similar to the prior slides that I was putting forward, if you increase your cloud solutions, let's say you have 2 cloud solutions, A and B, and you increase to C, you have increased your cost and complexity not by 50%. Because now, again, you have to take into account that A and B have to work well with C. So it's not just setting up, and to use my vending machine analogy, you can't set up a soda machine next to a candy bar machine like, you're in a waiting room somewhere. It doesn't work that way, because now the soda machine and the candy machine have to agree with each other, because let's say they're passing money. So it's greater than 1. If you increase your systems from 2 to 3, you'd think that's a 50% increase, but it's not. It's greater than that, because your complexity increases. Okay, next one, number 7, specialization is needed. Every solution that you obtain will require its own dedicated specialists. This is the people who operate and maintain it. And you shouldn't count, later on down the road, you've got solution A, and you've got one specialist in solution A that's just absolutely the bee's knees. You want to keep that talent within your organization. However, you're about ready to get rid of solution A and go with solution B. Don't expect that your specialist in solution A is going to say, oh yeah, I want to stay with you, so I'm going to retrain over to solution B so that you can keep me. Your chances of retaining talent are reduced when you get different platforms. Okay? Next one. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I said for all solutions. Along with that, your management oversight is needed for all solutions. Just as you need specialists to operate and maintain a particular solution or series of solutions, your management oversight must also match that. I gave the example earlier where if you say, I'm comfortable with Amazon, so let's go with Amazon, your CFO is going to say, nope, we want Google because it's half the price. And it does the same thing. So now you have to learn Google or hire somebody who's a specialist at managing Google. So your management could very well mistakenly think that any cloud services manager can handle all of the various cloud solutions, and that may not be the case. Okay? Next one, number 9, associated system complexity. Here's the thing. If you go from, let's say, 2 to 3 cloud solutions, you have now made your, let's say, service as a service, infrastructure as a service, whatever, server as a service, your configuration management, your enterprise architecture, your enclave border protection, including your firewall rule sets, everything has now increased in complexity. You have made the enterprise environment that much more complex when you go from, let's say, 2 to 3 cloud solutions. Everything becomes more complex. Okay? Next one, number 10, zero trust is more difficult to implement. Most service solutions begin with a set of default permissions and authority. Zero trust means you start with nothing and you build the authority in. No trust is established, no permissions are given, no authentication is allowed until you turn it on. So zero trust now gets into I turn on all of the services as I want them on Cloud Solution A, then I turn on all the Cloud Solution B solutions, authentication, access, permissions, sharing, etc. Then I have to see how A and B set their own permissions to talk to each other. Again, it's more complex and it takes more time. So if you're implementing zero trust, you have to take more time Again, it's greater than 1. 3 solutions is not 50% more work than 2, especially cloud to cloud. Okay, next one, number 11, data criticality. Most people haven't thought about this, but the federal government does a very good job of telling you how much you need in the way of management controls, because they say the criticality of the data determines the complexity and the scope of the solutions. In other words, let's give an example. If you are a commissary activity and you are purchasing goods and services and making it active in your, let's say, a base commissary at military bases worldwide, your data criticality, although it's important for you, is not the same as, let's say, nuclear surety information through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, where we're talking about access to nuclear devices or nuclear products, services that service nuclear facilities, etc. The data criticality is much higher for nuclear activities than it is for Twinkies. So your data criticality will determine the amount of your budget that you can put for helping to keep your solutions safe. If your criticality is low, you can't go out shopping for top of the line solutions. You just can't afford them. So something to think about. Data criticality will drive your budget. What are we trying to protect here? You know? Okay, number 12. Federal requirements may apply. We talked about this here in CS-Sensei. Federal governments may apply to certain situations or procedures, hiring, who you get your raw information from, whatever, even if you're not providing direct support for the federal government. Why? I'll give an example. You remember the, whatever the pipeline was, forgot the name of the pipeline, but the pipeline stopped working.
Scotty.
Colonial Pipeline, right. The pipeline stopped working. It was a business, but it provided fuel, in this case to the northeastern United States, which included military bases, government installations, federal buildings, federal fleets of vehicles, trucks and transport, the whole 9 yards. The federal government was affected when we couldn't get gas to the northeastern United States. So they're now saying that if you do business with the federal government, then you may have to apply the same controls to your business that the federal government applies to theirs. So I just wanted to open their minds up to the fact that, well, no, I'm providing building supplies. Yes, but they are building supplies that are being used to build a new hangar on the military base, and therefore where you get your boards from will make a difference. The government may step in and say, you can't get that from that company because they employ slave labor in that other country, or something like that. They've done it. So anticipate that federal governments may get involved in your business activities, even if you don't supply directly to them. And the last thing I talked about was some resources that the students can go for. Chris helped me with these. NIST publication 800-144 and 145. I did find that there are numerous drafts as well as commentaries on these. So you can, my advice to these students is going to be, do a lot of looking at the, don't just go to the first link you find, because you may have to go to 3 or 4 links to fully understand what NIST 800-144 is all about. Also, there is an FTC publication called 6 Steps Toward More Secure Cloud Computing. Good one to start with. Help you to understand the whole package, not just, you know, if I'm looking at the book here, the textbook, they talk about, you know, USA is doing this amount of whatever, you know, using this particular solution. Yeah, but what if they don't have that solution at where you're at? You know, that's the challenge you run into going from a book to real life. When you walk in the door, you can't reset the table. The table is already set for you. So I went to my extra credit question. I said, what is the #1 question I'm asked by newly graduated cybersecurity degree holders? Anybody have any ideas on what that question might be?
I'll give it 5 seconds because I already know, Scotty.
Yeah, you saw the slides. Anybody else?
I'll take a guess. How much money am I going to make?
That's a good one. That is not the big one, because there are lots of places out in the industry that tell you that. Indeed, CyberSeek, you know, they say salary.com. This is how much the average whatever gets. So, but that's a good one. That is always somebody's concern, especially if you're moving from a lower to a higher price point for the services you provide. If you go from, you know, stocking shelves at Walmart to being a cybersecurity analyst, your pay is going to go up, and you want to know how much. But that's not the #1 question I'm asked. Other guesses? Okay, here's the question that I get asked. So what do I do now? These people graduate with a degree, and they don't have somebody knocking down the door to give them a job. So they're like, now what? Literally, that's the #1 question I'm asked. They're like, I got a degree. Look, I got a degree. All right, so what do I do with it? How do I turn this into a bigger paycheck? How do I turn this into a career? So you know what I answer them? I say, you know what? You should go to the CS-Sensei Cybersecurity Mentorship Program and join us so that you can learn more about how to do things, where you can get these things, where the information is, how to fill out your resume, where to apply, how to pass your interview, you know, and opportunities, where to get cheap testing, where to, or in the case of the CC certification, free testing and certification. And then I said, along with the CyberSecurity Sensei, this is what it could do to your resume. Your bullet now says, I participate in the CS-Sensei Cybersecurity Mentorship Program, where we discuss and practice real-world cybersecurity scenarios from the service provider's viewpoint, applying lessons learned and conversing in terms of business risk and bottom line. And then the last thing you say, just to put the icing on the cake, attached, CS-Sensei Code of Ethics. So this is the way I finished up with them. I said, enjoy your new careers, have fun, and always, always, always be the white hat. So what do you guys think? Reasonable?
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, this is really good. Like, especially like you mentioned, like, so everything is done by the book, and this is something like you already mentioned, the real world, like, and it will be really helpful for those students. I know, because I'm thinking the same way. When someone tells you on the side, like, look, it's not everything like by the book, and you know, you have to think a little bit out of the box. So yeah, I think this is really good. So it's really good summary. So yeah.
Another way, and I just thought about this, thank you for that, Nerman. Imagine taking the textbook and walking into your new job and saying, okay, how much of this applies? And every time it applies, you put in a bookmark. You are not going to have the whole book at your job. You're going to have 20 bookmarks in here, but the whole rest of the book is going to be ignored at your new place of employment. Go ahead, Norman.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that. Yeah, I mean, I had the chance to speak with people like you who have a lot of experience in information technology, and most of them, I would say almost everyone, says the same thing. They said and they said also like the biggest issue like they have with new people like who just graduate and they got job. It's like they think like they can do their job based what they learn in school, based on the book and all those rules and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But most people says like it's not like that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always some issues. It never goes like the way that you expect to go like
Right.
based on the book. So it's always totally different, and that's why most people say like actually when you start doing your job, you start learning again from the beginning, from the scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really aware of that, and I'm expecting that too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like any profession, if you think about it. You could go and study the entire exam on how to be a contractor, for example. But until you start taking a nail and taking a hammer and pounding nails in to build a house, the book is not going to tell you how to build a house. They'll say a house is built by doing this and this and this and this and this. But now you're standing in pouring down rain. The situation dictates that you have to learn things by practice.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just learning now about learning a command shell Kali Linux,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean I'm taking some course like and they give you instructions like and they give you all those commands, and sometimes I do like I follow everything and it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And what I do, then I go to do research and people give some more options and then it works. Like they say like you have to get your flag and they give me like example how to do it and it doesn't work. I tried
Right.
million times and it doesn't work. And I go do research and I see people they did some different way like and I just follow that way and it works. So yeah, I think that's the thing like you never know what can expect until you start doing the job.
Right.
I think something to remember is classes like this, they can't teach you for every situation. They're teaching you how to think.
Yep.
They're giving you guidance to follow in the future, but that doesn't mean the guidance will 100% fit the situation that you're actually going to run into.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly in the cybersecurity field, everyone's always trying to think of new ways to beat the system. So your textbook that you learn from isn't going to be necessarily in date by the time you hit that situation. Someone's going to think something new.
Right. Yeah. I remember when I was working in the Pentagon, I had a senior government manager, very, very bright man, and he reminded me that the moment something gets put into a document, it's obsolete because this gets printed and then what happens tomorrow? And he made a great point. What he was trying to emphasize is if I'm looking at data, I want it to be now data versus a week old data or a year old data or whatever. So there's a lot to consider when you get onto the workplace. Here's another analogy. You buy a Swiss Army knife, and you may use certain parts of it a lot more than you use other parts, but you still carry around the whole Swiss Army knife. This is the Swiss Army knife. It may help you in certain areas. You're gonna wear out this particular portion of your textbook, but not everything. So yeah, very good points.
The certification companies are starting to get smart about that, and they're teaching a section about policy, standards, and procedures, and the difference between the three. And it's not all technical. There's actually a part of cybersecurity called governance, risk, and compliance That's a great way to enter cybersecurity, by the way, those looking for entry-level jobs.
Yep.
They're actually starting to teach that part of, hey, you're working under a policy that was created by law that has to be written very well. And then there's a certain set of standards or best practices that are recommended.
Right.
If you follow them, great, wonderful. But if you don't follow them, not the end of the world. And then there's the actual checklist procedures, step by step, of what you're supposed to be doing in order to make it. And I think that's a great lesson learned rather than start technical sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good. Also, and this is one that we've heard recently because we spoke about it in reference to the electrical charging station vulnerability. Remember I put that in Facebook? The federal government is pushing to get, however many thousands of charging stations put nationwide so that people can drive around with their EVs. Well, that's great, but somebody discovered one or two vulnerabilities in the software that's used for these stations. However, and somebody mentioned this, at the SANS Institute, somebody said, because the federal government is backing this, they're saying implement it by this date. They didn't take into account that in this case the charging station with its software, was going to have a vulnerability. So they didn't calculate that in for their deadline. So their mindset now is implement it now, fix it later. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, imagine being told, I don't care if there are vulnerabilities, do it anyway. You're going to be backed into a corner in some cases, and don't get frustrated about it. Advise your senior management, give them recommendations, and again, in terms of business risk and bottom line, not in terms of, this is better. They don't understand that. It'll decrease the, blah, blah, blah by 0.25%. They won't understand that either. This, in terms of business risk, this will reduce the likelihood that we end up on the front page of the Washington Post. That's an incentive, and the bottom line. And it's only 0.25% more than what we're already paying for this solution, or something like that. You've got to speak in reference to business risk, bottom line. And that it's tough for us techies to do that. We keep wanting to say, ooh, look, pretty buttons, because that's what we like doing. We like techie stuff. But our managers could care less. A service is a service. A telephone is a telephone. An electrical switch is an electrical switch. When you install an electrical switch, you're expected to know the codes necessary so you install the right switch. Same thing with IT solutions and cybersecurity solutions. You have to know the legislation. You have to know the risk landscape. You have to know everything about that before you recommend it. They approve it, and then they ask you to get it installed and operate and maintain it. It's your responsibility. You're not just like a used car salesman. You say, oh yeah, look how pretty it is. They buy it, they drive off the lot, and now it's their problem. It's not the case. You've got to be responsible. But again, when your manager says, I don't care about the risk, this is the lower cost solution, this is what we're going to go with, just remember to document. Because you obviously don't want to put yourself into a position where they can come back later and say, we bought this because you said so. So document what you're doing. And also, and this is just a long-standing business thing, a business journal is extremely helpful when you write it at the time the activities happen, like a daily business journal, as compared to trying to remember what you and I said 8 months ago at our meeting. Write your business journal at the time the activities happen, and that carries greater weight if you get into a finger-pointing war. Okay? Well, cool. I really appreciate this, everybody. I think it's going to be fun for me to present this at the University of the Potomac in 15 minutes. I think we're going to end it right here so that I can go make sure that my Google Meet hooks up and everything. Did you enjoy this? Did it make you think a little more? The complexity, the risk, the fact that when you do a solution, not only does it affect me, but it affects the other folks in my organization. And oh, by the way, now your customers have to be trained on 3 different cloud solutions, you know, that sort of thing. This one authenticates by using this. This one authenticates by using this. This one authenticates through your VPN. This one uses, you know, single sign-on, but this one doesn't, you know. Now they're sort of like, I just want to do my job. I want to get my slides. I want to do my, you know, quarterly cost projections. They don't care about all this other stuff. They just want to do their job. And now you've made it more complex for them. So it all has to be rolled in together day by day. Think at the systems level, not at the tool level. And you will go far in this industry. Okay? Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. I'll let you know how this goes. I'll share, you know. Oh, Scotty crashed and burned.
All right. Good luck, Scotty.
All right, guys. Take care.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.